So, thank you again for joining. I think we're now ready. Please make yourselves comfortable. I believe that this seminar should really last up to half an hour, and then hopefully we have some questions already submitted to us prior to the call, which I will help answer at the end. So I guess let me just switch to the next slide. Um, I just want to give a bit of context about who we are in who Marfeel is, what we do, and who our clients are. So we are a Google-approved publishing company. We have two key offices in the heart of Barcelona and New York, and publishers are our only clients. Okay, and really we're working for publishers to do a few key things, which will be made very clear during this presentation. But really, I guess from a publisher standpoint, it's all about monetization, of course, improving the speed of websites, and of course the overall user experience. So that's what I'm going to be talking about very clearly during this seminar, and there's a number of ways which we improve those key things, and you can see on this slide here, it's listed very, very clearly that we're committed to improving overall speed, engagement, and revenue. Okay, so we're looking to make sites incredibly fast, blazingly fast, we often call it, and increasing engagement through a revolutionary user experience that encourages and promotes content discovery and consumption. So we have also a very, very sophisticated ad setup that values the reader in terms of their page view time and number of pages per session, but also maximizes the revenue that each reader generates. So the idea is that we're keeping readers on the screen for as long as possible, monetizing from that reader, but at the same time promoting an ad experience which is consistent with our engagement strategy. To give you a point of reference, typically speaking, responsive sites have a page load time of between 5 to 7 seconds. Typically speaking, Marfeel reduces this load time to under 1 second, and in many cases under 0.7 seconds. So a really significant boost to the page speed load time, which is very significant to both the engagement and the revenue. Typically, we've found that if you're looking to boost engagement and revenue, you first need to look at speed. Now, all publishers, or all good publishers, do already know this, and Google has actually released a number of tools to help publishers understand their page speed. But it's all good and well understanding that your page speed is too slow, but doing something about it is much more tricky, and this is where we help publishers optimizing their sites. One documented case where we worked with a publisher saw revenue per visit increase by over 175%, and another by 600%. I would recommend that you visit marfeel.com/case studies to see a list of our clients that we're working with currently that have seen some really superb results. So 3 key goals: more speed, more engagement, and more revenue. But where do we work, and how does the solution actually affect you? Well, of course, we work across the mobile web, as you'd expect. The title of this presentation includes the word PWA, so I think it's safe to assume that we work across Marfel's progressive web apps, but we also include native apps, Google AMP, Facebook Instant Articles, Google Newsstand, Apple News, and other platforms in our solution. So what you can take from that is that it's a 360-degree solution. We attempt to cover all bases when it comes to readers enjoying your content. Now, the really great thing about this integrated approach is that if you want to integrate ad networks, potentially even your own custom ad networks solution, then we can absolutely do that for you. Any change you want to make, even from a server-side integration, such as FP, can be made your side, and that will feed right the way through our portfolio of progressive web apps, native apps, Google AMP, and everything else. So you make one change, and the monetization setup will feed right the way through the pyramid. Nice and simple. But who do we work with? So here we have a list of some of our key brands. I mean, we work with over 400 partners currently serving over 6 billion readers per year. You can see that some very large global brands such as Time Inc. and EWN and the Washington Times work with us, and also some publications in our home market of Spain, such as El Confidencial. So all in all, you're in good company. As you can see, our expertise lies very much with global publishers in optimizing their sites. Not only are we recognized by major publishers, but we're recognized by major technology partners too. I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation that we're a Google certified publishing partner. We're also an official Google AMP contributor. We're recognized by Facebook for their Facebook Instant Articles initiative, and we've also been recognized by Gartner and Forrester too. So these are innovators and developers who recognize our solution as a solution which is incredibly good for publisher improvement in terms of monetization and optimization. So let's have a look at some of the issues that publishers typically face when trying to engage their audience in a better way, and specifically on mobile, because as you can see from this chart, mobile is becoming increasingly important. In 2013, the mobile web overtook the desktop web and indeed the tablet web for importance. Previously, you simply had to optimize a desktop site, and that was job done. But now it's all about mobile. And as you can see, 72% in 2016 was mobile, and now in 2017, we're up to 85%. So having an optimized mobile strategy across the various different systems, native apps, Google AMP, etc., is now not just a nice to have, but a need to have. It's essential if you want to grow engagement and revenues. So we know that on mobile, different rules apply, okay? Of course, mobile phone users, typically they're out and about. We need those sites to load quickly. You can see an interesting and recently well-publicized stat here from Google, which says 53% of mobile users abandon sites that take longer than 3 seconds to load. Now that's incredibly important because you've done the hard job. Often, many of you promote your content and you've had some success and you've got a reader to actually click on a link and visit your site. Now, it's absolutely important that we retain those readers and we don't lose them just because of speed. So we also want, we watched, read, listened, and streamed more media than ever in 2016, and of course in 2017 too, which means that we all want to be found. This is where SEO has an incredibly important play. Marfeel uses a number of technologies to improve the SEO, or search engine optimization, that is very well recognized by the most popular search engines, and we'll talk through a little bit later some of the ways that you can actually test our sites versus some sites that you see across the web, especially traditional responsive sites. So this is where we are in 2017, but also the third pillar here is that we need to be ready. Mobile usage isn't stagnant and is in fact growing. As you can see the stat here, by 2020, there will be 6.1 billion smartphone users globally. The rate of consumption on mobile will only increase, and publishers need to be ready to leverage these market trends. Other publishers will be doing it, so absolutely you need to do it too. So now that we've seen the challenges and demands publishers are facing, let's examine what readers expect from the mobile experience. So essentially they expect a complete experience, a smooth and frictionless mobile experience, and as I said before, with lightning quick speed. Readers expect to be able to use their mobile devices to access relevant content in any circumstance or setting. Browsing speeds have to be fast. We are becoming more and more accustomed to fast loading times. And this is incredibly important even with ad networks and commenting systems or widgets integrated. Next, as we have been using mobile devices more and more, we have developed a set of conventions around user experience that we expect. Swiping gestures, for instance. These are almost expected now as part of the mobile web. Readers want to be able to integrate with social and share the stories that they care about the most. We make this incredibly easy for readers to actually share their content with their networks of choice. Offline access is also becoming increasingly important. Readers want to be able to access content even when offline. And typically speaking, offline doesn't just mean when you're on the subway and you have no signal. Offline can mean when you have a shaky internet connection. And typically speaking, this is the most common usage of offline access features. Readers are now very accustomed to receiving push notifications on mobile. And for publishers, this is a great way to increase the traffic flow to your site. If you're not using push notifications now, you should, and PWAs will allow you to in a way which is much more simple than it has ever been before. And obviously monetization is the final tenet here. See relevant ads. We don't want your readers being annoyed by ads which pop up, distort the content, and are irrelevant to them. We want useful content and useful ads that a reader wants to see. Therefore, keeping reader loyalty on your site and monetizing the experience in a better way for you. Now, what can publishers do to meet these kind of expectations? Well, the first option would be with a native app. Native apps give your readers the functionalities they demand from a great mobile experience. Native applications enhance the way we locate, consume, and share content, but they still present some challenges. And as you can see on this slide, these are the challenges. They're expensive to develop, very expensive. Often, as soon as you release an app onto the relevant app stores, they're out of date. You need to update the apps as a result, and readers and mobile phone users have to constantly download a lot of data on their phones just to update the relevant apps, not even before consuming content. Typically, branding doesn't actually carry across between the mobile web and the apps. It's much easier to change something on the mobile web than it is on native. And so typically speaking, publishers will amend something on native on the mobile web much before they do so on native. And so you're losing branding consistency between the various channels, let alone advertising optimization consistency. There are thousands of apps in the native app store. Typically speaking, they're quite difficult to find. Now, we know that the mobile web is easy to search through search engines like Google and Yahoo and Bing, for instance. But app stores are often slightly more tricky. And obviously, we want to encourage as much usage as possible of your mobile content. And finally, again, native apps are heavy. They're heavy to download at the beginning, and they're heavy to update. Now, for readers in more developed countries, this might not be such a concern, albeit expensive. But readers in developing countries or countries with shaky internet connections and low data prevalence, this can be a much greater concern. Android apps typically have a weight, I should say, of 11.5 megabytes, and Apple 37.9 megabytes per app. There is another way. There's an option bridges the gap between native and the mobile web. And I think you're all probably aware that this answer is going to be progressive. It's the progressive web with the apps at the end, PWA. And here we say that PWA bridges both mobile and native. It's essential that the emergence of technology that delivers the frictionless and smooth user experience of native apps and native features on the mobile web is brought to your readers. Where native apps are very large, progressive web apps are light, less than a megabyte on average. Where native apps require large and frequent updates, PWAs or progressive web apps do not, because they're automatically updated in the background without the user needing to go to the store and triggering a manual update. Where native apps need to be found within the App Store, PWAs are discoverable in search engines. Where native apps are expensive, progressive web apps are cheaper, feel free. So what is PWA? Progressive web app is a coin termed by Google. Now I want to look at some other benefits of PWAs. What PWA offers to publishers to deliver their audience is a range of benefits that exceed evolving user expectations, increases engagement, and boosts ad revenue. They're reliable and fast. They also contribute to enhanced smoothness and the elimination of something called scroll jank. That's when you browse onto a page and widgets or ads scroll the page for you and make it more difficult for you to actually read your content. PWAs help with the elimination of this scroll jank. They're also secure. HTTPS is a requirement. The way these benefits are made a reality is because of the invaluable features that PWA offers. And we're going to introduce each now, one by one. First, push notifications. Push notifications, as mentioned earlier, were previously only available for native apps and the users that downloaded them. But now, this feature is available so publishers can reach their audience on the web instead of relying on them to download the App Store. They're so important because they add lifetime value to your traffic. For the users that opt in, they can provide a tool to keep them engaged and drive them back to your site. And we have a number of stats which time after time prove the efficiency of push notifications. At Marfeel, the UI to offer push notifications to users is integrated in the Marfeel UX, which falls in line with our core principles of prioritizing the reader through an elegant and organic flow. One of the biggest advantages of push notifications through PWAs is that publishers have a stated method to reach their entire audience, regardless of whether they're on a mobile site or their native application. They can be configured to reach their entire audience. Again, you see the trend here is consistency, not only in terms of UX, branding, monetization, but also in terms of bringing readers to the site. Second feature is the Add to Home Screen button. Specifically, it's the addition of publisher's logo on the user device's home screen in the exact same fashion a native app icon would be added to the home screen. When accessing the PWA from the home screen, the mobile page opens without the browser address bar, providing the crisp and clean look of a native app's larger screen size, so naturally, content and branding is more prominent. But you might be asking, how does this affect engagement? Some statistics that we've gathered show that 17% of those eligible users decide to install. Those publications receive 33% more page views per visit. To give you an idea of how this feature is offered to users, we have a simple flow. Users are presented with the option to add the site to their home screen. There is no need to search and find it in any app store and enter a password for verification. By clicking Add, the site immediately appears on the home screen, which also includes a splash screen and a window in the device's app carousel. And you can see these screenshots here demonstrating this flow. Thirdly, offline access. I mentioned it briefly before, but another really exciting feature is the types of offline access PWAs offer. Now, there are two key types. The first that we're going to talk about is the ability to keep consuming content and browsing in flaky conditions. Imagine you're on the metro, subway, or tube where you can lose connection for a few seconds or a few minutes. With PWAs, your users can keep reading and browsing with content with the same smooth behavior that they expect. Typically speaking, you'd have lost your reader. The reason this is possible is because PWAs prefetch and cache articles as the user navigates. So if a user swipes to the next article, they'll be able to read the text in its entirety. While the whole site isn't automatically cached to save a user's data plan and disk space, if the user gets to content that hasn't been cached, specific UI has been integrated to inform the user of their offline status and to refresh the page. Now, the second type of offline access is the ability to download entire sections to read later. This would be triggered when a user plans to be in an area without connectivity, like a remote location or boarding a flight. In a Marfeel PWA, the option to download a section is located in the lateral menu, also known as the hamburger menu. Both these features highly contribute to increased brand loyalty. Why, you might ask? Because your publication is providing users with uninterrupted and seamless experiences in challenging scenarios that will keep them coming back. Now, what's the underlying technology? PWAs are possible due to a set of JavaScript APIs called service workers. They allow some JS or JavaScript to run in the background and are what contribute to a PWA's increased speed by being able to independently detect when a user is on a mobile device. They also allow the features like push notifications and offline access. Something that deserves to be mentioned regarding PWAs are the requirements that must be met to have a PWA and the features that come with it. Firstly, publishers must serve their content over HTTPS. For their technology like service workers to make push notifications, offline access, and the ability to add the site to your home screen a reality, they need to explicit permissions that can only be delivered through HTTPS. So HTTPS, guys, is an absolute must. Secondly, right now, PWAs are only supported by the Android operating system on the Chrome mobile browser. Apple have traditionally not supported service workers, meaning that browsers within iOS have not been able to run PWAs. However, in August 2017, there was a huge development, and Apple changed the status of service workers to in development as a WebKit feature, meaning that they could speculatively, in the future, support service workers. This shows that Apple understands the importance of PWAs. They are traditionally behind the curve when it comes to adopting industry innovations. For instance, they adopted 3G later than others because they want to offer products of perfect quality. So expect service workers on iOS at some point soon. So now that PWA is getting widespread support, they're getting better and better, meaning that native apps may eventually lose their edge. Marfeel will have a blog post on Apple's relationship with service workers very soon, so if you haven't already checked out Marfeel's blog, I recommend that you do so. So how do PWAs perform? Let's take a look. There's an online tool called Lighthouse, and this has been developed by Google. It's a test that assesses a site based on 4 key factors. PWAs, which examines if the site has the latest technologies implemented, like service workers, to provide the cutting features like offline access and the ability to add to the home screen. Performance. This looks at how long it takes to load the first meaningful pane, including often the first ad impression. Accessibility, which assesses how all users, including those in low bandwidth areas, can access the site. And best practices, which examines if a site follows all web development best practices, like the use of HTTPS. While it's not yet official, a publication's Lighthouse score could very likely become a key ranking signal in search engine result pages, meaning it's important for publishers to get this right, and the sooner the better. When considering Lighthouse ranking scores, I want to take a look at a simple benchmark test that we've performed. In this graph, we've compared Marfeel scores to some of the world's leading online publications. The reason we're only comparing PWA and performance scores here is because, from an engineering and development perspective, it is very difficult to get a high score in both. In fact, there's an interesting where a high score in one category, as you notice on the left, sacrifices a high score in the category on the right. As you can see, that's the trend in the graph. Sites with a high score in PWA have a low score in performance, and the site with a high score in performance correspondingly have a low score in PWA. But in this regard, Marfeel seeks to surpass the competition, of course, using Lighthouse as our own benchmark to audit ourselves. We score optimally in both categories. Now, we've already mentioned the importance of loading for all publishers on mobile. It's also a critical part of Google's Lighthouse test. But more importantly, it's a deciding factor on whether a user will stay on your site or abandon it and register it as a bounce. And let me click this video here, and you should see in real time an example pitting Marfeel against publishing leaders. As you can see, Marfeel's first meaningful pane comes in at a far reduced time to some very significant responsive sites like the New York Times and TechCrunch. So, every second counts. So we've already mentioned the importance, So, how will PWAs affect my mobile ad revenue? New technology and speed is important, but we also need to speak about this in terms of monetization. Specifically, how will PWAs affect our mobile ad revenue? And obviously, this is one of the key things which we all care about. For that, we need to take a look at a metric that we call ARPU, and this stands for average revenue per 1,000 users. Now, there's a clear formula here. PWAs work to boost the average revenue per 1,000 users. Now, the reason why it's such a critical KPI is because it accounts for a variance of increased traffic. In other words, it applies apples to apples instead of comparing apples to oranges. Just considering total revenue isn't enough. Let's take an example. If a publisher makes more revenue one day, that's great, but we don't have the full story. What if they bought traffic from Facebook? What if there was a polarizing news event that sent people scrambling for their mobile phones? Just look at revenue and traffic. Just looking at revenue and traffic is insufficient and doesn't provide a clear enough evaluation of performance that takes both monetization and engagement into consideration. But the metric here, ARPU, does. It ensures that the constant goal is to maximize the revenue generated for every single visit and is a much better indicator of performance. In relation to PWAs, the features they offer, like push notifications to drive traffic back to the web and increase engagement, provide a boost in ARPU and therefore overall revenue. So I want to briefly turn our attention to the Marfeel solution. With the Marfeel solution, publishers get a PWA with all its shiny features straight out of the box. Of course, as we've mentioned, to leverage all of their features, publishers will first need to be HTTPS compliant. With Marfeel, publishers get a robust and industry-leading monetization strategy that optimizes floor prices and ad tech. Above that, they also get a holistic solution where Google AMP and Facebook Instant Articles and the most important mobile channels are seamlessly implemented to maximize a publisher's mobile presence. Something that we also take a lot in is that our publishing partners will always benefit from the latest developments in the mobile ecosystem to bring them the best and the brightest. At Marfeel, we're always working on the edge of development. On that point, we were actually early adopters of PWA technology, just to make sure we were always one step ahead of the curve. Now that essentially brings us to the end of the presentation portion of the webinar, and we're going to get through to the questions that you've been sending us throughout. So just bear with me a couple of seconds and I'll have those questions to hand, which I can help answer for you. So I have three questions here. The first from Sarah. Do you have some examples of progressive web apps? We do, as shown in the presentation slightly earlier on. We have Brazil 24/7, for example. So I urge you to visit the Brazil 24/7 website. We can also share some Marfeel PWA examples with you after this seminar. So if you're looking for some other examples, then we can certainly provide you with some. Antonio asks, how much does a PWA cost to develop? So, Antonio, this will vary depending on the size and complexity of the PWA. Learning to make the most of working with the cache is complicated to master, and it can take even talented developers a very long time to work out. But of course, at Marfeel, we offer PWAs off the shelf to all HTTPS compliant partners. So if you have HTTPS, then great, we can give you a PWA for free. Or if not, we can actually help you get on to HTTPS so you can benefit. Ryan asks, how popular will all progressive web apps be in the future? So progressive web apps continue to grow and improve, becoming more and more similar to native apps, as you might expect, in terms of their functionality. Given the other benefits of PWAs, like their small size and how easy they are to install, we should see PWAs continue to gather steam and be more widely adopted. Of course, if Apple eventually enables service workers, and there is no telling how popular PWAs might be. So for PWAs, the future is absolutely bright. Thank you all for joining this seminar. Of course, I hope you all have my details. If you don't, I'll make sure that you're sent them after this seminar. But we look forward to hearing from you and speaking again very soon. Have a lovely rest of your day.